Now that we've got our Bootstrap in place, we're going to add some or be introduced to or get started with JavaScript. And so we start at the very, very basic level like we do with everything else. And what we're going to do then is, instead of writing out hello world, we're going to use JavaScript to write out hello world. And so I'm going to erase this hello world and hit the enter key so I get some space between my H1s, and we're going to intersperse, start adding some JavaScript. And so when you use JavaScript, what you're going to do is you're going to, when we're writing JavaScript within our HTML, so we have HTML, and now we're going to put in some JavaScript. So what we need to do is we need to create a script tag. And that tells the browser that everything inside this open and close script tag is JavaScript. So as a result, I can't put regular HTML in it. So if I put a paragraph tag in here, for example, this would be a no-no, because this is not JavaScript, this is HTML. So this is in fact an error. So we don't want to put any HTML, we are only going to put JavaScript. So this is the third language, your trifecta of web development. You have HTML, which is its own language, CSS, which is its own syntax and language, and now a third one, which is JavaScript. And so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in window.document.write, and I'm going to put in hello JavaScript. And after a JavaScript statement, you can put a semicolon, or you don't have to put a semicolon. So if you're used to a more structured language in which you always need to put in a semicolon, it is good practice to put it at the end of this statement. However, you don't have to. All right, so what I'm seeing here is, and some of this right now is just sort of memorization, and then as we get further into JavaScript, maybe in your next semester, you will learn more about what's going on here. But for the moment, what we're doing is we're saying on the document, at this exact location where the JavaScript is being read. So in other words, remember, the browser is going to read an H1 tag, and then it's going to read this next, and it's going to read everything in sequential order, top, left, right, top, bottom, left, right. So as soon as it hits this line, it's going to write hello JavaScript. So let me see if that happens. So I'm going to refresh this page, and you can in fact see the word hello JavaScript. So window.document.write, and you have to window.document.write. You might see this done without the window. You may see this in documentation without, and that will work for reasons we don't really need to go into in this intro portion. So that will work. So document.write hello JavaScript. Now what I want you to be aware of is, and very important when you're writing JavaScript, if I right click on the page, and we've been into the inspect tool before, the important place that we want to live now when we're writing JavaScript is on this console tag, because this console tag is going to give us some errors. So if we've made some mistakes in our JavaScript, before the browser would render things and everything would work beautifully, even though we validated or didn't validate, but we learned that validating is important. So if I misspelled right, for example, let's say I made this a capital W instead of a lowercase w, and I'm going to refresh the page. Well, you can see that my JavaScript didn't write. It didn't work because it is case sensitive, and I'm now utilizing the console. I get an error. And oftentimes the errors are hard to read, and that's normal when you're learning programming. But part of learning programming is reading the error messages that may immediately or not make sense, and then you have to kind of figure out what it is that the browser is trying its best, or the error, whatever is displaying your error, is trying to tell you. And it's saying that document.write is not a function, meaning that it doesn't understand what document.capital-write is. So if you're following along in this with these examples, and your page isn't doing what my page is doing, I would make sure that you have, I'm going to even keep my console open as a reminder. If you keep the console open, you'll be able to see if you just didn't do something right. And so I'm going to add the write back in, so make sure you save it, and then refresh my page, and now I am seeing that hello JavaScript. So anything that is rendered in text here inside the script tag is being displayed as an H1, and it's receiving that display1 class, that the Bootstrap class that we saw before. So all we're doing is physically using JavaScript, writing the text instead of the hello world. We've got hello JavaScript. All right, So I'm going to continue on with that idea. So on the next, after the H1, I'm going to create a paragraph. And we're going to use JavaScript to write something in this paragraph. So I'm going to use the word script again. I need to create a script tag spelled properly, script, S-C-R-I-P-T. So I have an open and closing script tag. And remember that I can only write JavaScript in this script tag. So this time, if you've had any programming experience in the past, you'll recognize this concept. If this is your first experience programming, I'm going to explain a variable. So to create a variable, I'm going to create the word var, which is how I set up a variable in JavaScript. And I'm going to create my own name. So you're going to create a user-defined word. I'm going to say my name because I'm going to create something to keep my name in it. So you want to create a variable name which is kind of synonymous to what you're going to use it for. So if I read the word my name, you can guess that I'm putting my name in there. That kind of is self-explanatory. It should explain what's going in there. And if you don't know what a variable is, if a variable is something you haven't worked with before, all that is you're telling the browser, in memory, can you please set aside a space in memory that I can put data in that potentially can change throughout the course of my program? Meaning that I'm just creating a box. I'm creating an empty box that I can put something in. So in the moment, I'm going to put in my name. So I'm going to create an equal sign, and I'm going to put in quotation marks, Kirsten. So in that empty box in memory, I want to put in my name. And so if I then document.write what's inside of that box, document write, and then document write, I'm going to put my name. There's quite a lot of things going on here. Now sometimes I leave off semicolons. I have a bad habit of leaving them off, so try to be consistent. If you're going to put them, put them. If you're not going to put them, don't put them. So let me just kind of keep reiterating what a variable is in case you're not sure. I haven't made that clear yet. So document write, and I'm going to put that variable. So I'm going to tell the browser, go look in the box that I created in memory called my name and look and see what I put inside of it. Notice that, and that's what I want you to display. So display whatever's inside the box at this moment in time. Well, above here, I put in my name, literally Kirsten, into this box. So print out, go look what's inside that box and print it out, which is what it did. So notice that I did not put my name in quotation marks, because as soon as I put in quotation marks, my name, then you're telling the browser literally whatever's inside the quotation marks, that's what I want you to print out. And so you'll see that it prints out literally what's inside of the quotation marks. So I don't want literally, I want you to go look inside that place I've set aside in memory, which is called, I gave it the name, my name. And so let's document write that instead. So why is a variable important? Well, I might change that variable throughout the course of my program. In other words, once I've created this variable in memory with the var, I don't want to recreate it again. I don't need to set another place in memory. I just want to access it. So I don't use the var. I just say whatever was in that box before, I want to put something new in it. So let's say I put in Stitch now. So now when I document write, I'm going to copy and paste the same line. So now when I document write my name, we're going to see that we've got Stitch now. Because if we look through this, let's just talk through it just to make sure we understand. var, hey computer, can you put a space aside in memory, that a little box that I can put data in that potentially can change throughout the course of my program? I'm going to call that space in memory my name, and I want to put into it Kirsten. So, and the browser says, no problem, I can do that. So in memory, we have a box with Kirsten in it. So then we want to print out on our page whatever is in that box at this moment in time. Well, what's in the box right now is Kirsten. And so we can see Kirsten did get displayed. Wait, that's just this part right here. Okay. Then we changed what was inside the box. We said, all right, go grab what's inside that box and change it. You can only put one value at a time. So I can't put Kirsten and Stitch. It has to be one or the other. So Kirsten got overwritten with Stitch. So my name now has stitch in it. So when we document write my name now, it is going to have stitch in it. So that's how a variable works. Variables are an absolute core component of programming and a good thing to learn if you didn't know them ahead of time. All right, so let's expand on this thought. So we're seeing that JavaScript is writing some text. And so if we go to our inspector and we look at, I'm going to drill down to this area where we wrote our code, which is in the paragraph. We can see our paragraph got rendered. It's right there. There's some script which got rendered and the text which actually displayed on our web page. All right, so let's take this a step further. All right, so I'm going to create a horizontal rule, HR, just so I can have a nice break between whatever is going on up here and what we're going to do next, just for a visual. I think I'm also going to comment out this work right here. So what I mean by that is I'm going to highlight these two lines. So I'm clicking and dragging, and I'm going to hit Command, if you're on a Mac, Command / or Control / on a PC. Or you can manually make these little / lines. And all that's doing is it's graying out this area. Graying out, which means we're commenting is what the word is. We're commenting out this code, which means that anything that's commented out is for the programmer to see, but the browser will ignore. So if we click on refresh, and we'll see that the browser did in fact ignore what's commenting it out, is only rendering that which is not commented out. And the only reason why I'm doing that, well, first of all, is to teach a concept if you didn't already know it. I also wanted to leave this code here for visual if you wanted to see it. But I don't want it to actually display on my page because it's clutter. It was just for demonstration. All right, so the HR is just a horizontal rule, which is this line going across, just so I can split up some concepts. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another script tag. So we're going to do some more JavaScript. So I'm going to make a script tag, and so remember, in between here is only JavaScript. Remember, I cannot put a p tag. I've said this before because that's HTML. But it turns out that I can use JavaScript to write HTML. What on earth? So let me show you what I want to do next. A couple of concepts going on here at one time. So here's what we're going to do. Inside this script tag, I'm going to do another document write. Document write. And what I'm going to do this time, instead of just putting a string like we did before, like we just put something inside quotations, or we put a variable name, I'm going to do a combination. So here's what it's going to look like. I'm just going to copy and paste so I don't have to fat finger while I'm talking, and then I'll explain what I've done. So I'm going to paste some code in here and tell you what I've done. All right, so there's a lot going on here. Inside quotations, remember, is telling the browser, I want you to print out on your web page exactly what I put inside quotation marks. So if we look at what I have in quotation marks, I have a p tag. So physically, Mr. Browser, please write a p tag. Inside that p tag, I need my name is, and then I need a closing p tag, which is exactly how you create p tags, right? You make a p tag, you put stuff inside of it, and then you need a closing p tag. So I'm using JavaScript, but I have to write exactly what the HTML is that I need. So that's what that would look like. But I also have this plus sign in between, and I have my variable name, which doesn't go in quotation marks. Remember, we learned that a little bit up in the example before. So here's what's happening. I'm saying, please join. So that's what the plus sign is. Join together various things. Please join together whatever I wrote in here. Put in whatever's inside this box at this moment. So that goes in next. Remember, the variable name doesn't go in quotations, so I can't put that inside of here, otherwise it'll print out exactly what's inside the quotations. So join together this information inside, we call it a string, this information inside the open and close quotation marks. Next, I want you to put in whatever was in this box, which currently is Kirsten. And then make sure you join in the end of that block of code, that block of text, the closing p tag. So if we were to look at this in the browser, let's just see what happened. So you can see exactly that. My name is, Kirsten got put in, and then an end of paragraph. Well, let me just verify that this part got written. So if I go and drill down again here in my inspector, and I find that there's my HR, so there's my, I put that in so I can differentiate the prior thought to the current thought. And I look and see what was actually written. It's as if I had written it by hand, right? If I had manually typed into my editor, P, my name is Kirsten, and P, but it just did the interpretation as well. It also added what was in that variable. So now I've used JavaScript to write the P tag. See how the P tag is there? The P tag is being rendered, and the information is the text that I literally put in, my name is, and then Kirsten got put in to where the variable is. So now we're actually using JavaScript to write our HTML and plop in information from our variable. All right, I want to remind you to visit the console if things didn't work out the way you expected. For example, let's say I left off this plus sign. That is syntactically correct. That is something that the browser won't be able to understand because I have to follow the syntax rules just like you do in grammar, right? You have to put a period at the end of the sentence. You have to organize your sentence in a correct way, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Well, programming is the same way. So now if I refresh my page, you can see that I'm getting an error. Things didn't work out the way I had hoped, and I have an error. So always pay attention to your console. And it's saying that I'm missing a parenthesis after argument list, and it's even giving me a line number 35 on my index page. So if I look on my line 35, it says it's not understanding this particular statement. And sometimes it might be a little bit confusing, like uncaught syntax error, missing a parenthesis. So what it's doing its best to give you information, and that might not be perfectly clear. What it's trying to say is it sees the end of a quotation marks. Nothing else makes sense here, so it's expecting a parenthesis here. Well, we need to fix that, and so it's not saying you're missing your plus sign. It's not smart enough to know that, but it is smart enough to say I don't understand how to read that. So always pay attention to your console if things aren't coming out the way you expected. So I can see that I'm not getting any errors. I am getting what I expected. So something else that you can do, which can be helpful when you're learning how to program or you're what's called debugging. I don't understand, I don't know, I am having some trouble troubleshooting why my code's not working the way I wanted it to. We also have this command called console log, and what that'll do is I'm going to console log my name, which is the variable. Again, I'm using the variable so I don't put it in quotation marks. I always forget my semicolons. Are you yelling at me out there? I hope so. So anyway, so console log, and what console log does is it will actually display that variable down here in your console. And so whatever you console log and put in parentheses, you can, like even if I wanted to do this just to see it, I'll put all of this in there. Console log, let's just do it simple as my name equals. Console log, I need to put that in parentheses. Just like a console log, my name, and then we need the parentheses at the end here. So this isn't actually going to render my HTML, it's just going to show me what it is that I'm creating. So that's a nice place to help you kind of see what it is that you are creating in your JavaScript. It's in the console, so it's not showing up on your web page, but it's in your dev tools, so you can kind of get some information about it if that helps you understand what it is that you're doing. So console log is helpful for troubleshooting and kind of seeing what is it that I'm creating here with this, we call this actually concatenation, where we join together different pieces of information. In other words, a string, I'm joining a variable, and I'm joining another string. This is what I'm actually creating, and here is where it's actually rendering it, so on your line 35.